Alimat stared at her reflection in the still waters of the village stream, her fingers hovering above the surface as if wanting to touch the image, yet afraid it might shatter and reveal something worse. The evening sun cast golden rays through the baobab trees, but even in this flattering light, all she could see were flaws. "Too dark," she whispered, running her palm across her ebony skin that gleamed like polished onyx. "Too different." At 19, Alimat possessed a beauty that was undeniable yet unconventional in Olarin village. Her skin was the deepest black, smooth and flawless, catching light in ways that made her appear to be carved from midnight itself. Her mother had once called it a blessing from the ancestors, skin that held the stories of 1,000 nights. But in Olarun, where lighter complexions were prized, her uniqueness had become her burden. Behind her, laughter erupted as a group of young women passed by, carrying water jugs on their heads. Their gazes flicked toward Alimat, followed by whispers and more laughter. "I heard Kolad refused to court her," one whispered loudly enough for Alimat to hear. "Said he couldn't see her in the darkness without a lantern." Fresh tears threatened, but Alimat blinked them away. She had cried enough. 3 marriage proposals had been made in the village this month, none for her. Even Bisi, with her crooked teeth and sharp tongue, had secured a husband. Alimat gathered her washing and rose, squeezing water from the cloth with more force than necessary. She knew what the village elders said about her. Beautiful features wasted on skin too dark for honor. Her mother tried to console her, saying the right man would see her worth. But even her father's eyes held disappointment when suitors passed, their compound without stopping. That night, as the village slept, Alimat made her decision. She had heard the whispers about the witch who lived beyond the forbidden forest, Iya Alagbo, the herbalist whose powers could transform the unfortunate. People visited her in secret, returning changed, some for better, some for worse. Before dawn, Alimat gathered her savings, copper coins earned from selling palm oil hidden in a clay pot beneath her sleeping mat. She wrapped them in a leaf, tucked them into her waistband, and slipped away while the roosters were still silent. The forest path grew narrower as she ventured deeper, the air thickening with moisture and the scent of decaying leaves. Strange, birds called warnings from invisible perches. Twice she nearly turned back, especially when a green mamba slithered across her path, regarding her with dispassionate eyes before disappearing into the undergrowth. "A sign," she muttered, but pressed. On by midday she reached a clearing where a hut stood on stilts, smoke curling from its thatched roof. Human and animal bones hung from strings around the perimeter, clicking together in the breeze like macabre chimes. "I knew you would come today," Alimat startled at the voice. A woman emerged from behind the hut, her skin wrinkled like dried fruit, her eyes milky with cataracts yet somehow seeing everything. Her hair stood in white tufts and her fingers were bent like twisted roots. "You seek beauty," the witch said. Not a question, but a statement. "How did you—" "The desperate ones all want the same things: love, beauty, power." She circled Alimat, sniffing. "You already possess beauty, child. But not the kind you want." Alimat's heart pounded. This was madness. Yet she found herself speaking. "Want to be lighter, beautiful as the women men desire." The witch's laugh was like stones falling. "Beauty is a curse disguised as a blessing. Are you certain?" "I have payment." Alimat produced her coins. The witch waved them away. "I do not want your copper. Beauty like you seek demands greater payment. Always." "I'll pay anything," Alimat whispered, desperation overriding caution. The witch's smile revealed teeth filed to points. "Then we have an agreement." She disappeared into her hut, returning with a clay pot sealed with beeswax. "Apply this after bathing. By morning you will have your wish." As Alimat reached for it, the witch grasped her wrist with surprising strength. "Remember, child, nothing freely given is ever truly free, and nothing taken can ever truly be yours." But Alimat was already imagining the faces of those who had mocked her, the suitors who would come. Whatever price awaited, surely it was worth paying. She had no way of knowing that before the new moon rose again, She would learn the true cost of beauty, and it would be measured in blood, flesh, and soul. Dawn broke over Olarin with a crimson sky that seemed to set the thatched roofs ablaze. Alamat woke with a strange tingling throughout her body, a sensation like ants marching beneath her skin. For a moment she lay still, afraid to look, to confirm what she already sensed. Something profound had changed. When she finally gathered the courage to examine her hands, she gasped. Where once her skin had been deep obsidian, it now glowed a soft honey brown, radiant in the morning light filtering through the mud walls. She scrambled to her feet, rushed to the polished metal disc that served as her mirror. The face that stared back was hers, yet transformed. Her features seemed more refined, her eyes larger, her lips fuller. And her skin, oh, her skin had lightened to the exact shade that village men praised in their songs. She touched her face in disbelief, half expecting the illusion to dissolve. Beneath her fingertips, Alamat, her mother's voice outside the sleeping chamber. Are you awake? There's water to be fetched before... She stopped abruptly as she entered, the water gourd slipping from her grasp and shattering on the packed earth floor. Who are you? She whispered, backing away. Where is my daughter? Mother. It's me, Alamat said, her voice unchanged. It's Alamat. Recognition dawned slowly in her mother's eyes, followed by confusion, then fear. What have you done, child? What terrible magic is this? Before Alamat could answer, her father appeared, drawn by the commotion. His reaction mirrored her mother's: shock, disbelief, and then a slow, calculating assessment that made Alamat uncomfortable. The witch in the forest, he said flatly. You went to her. It wasn't a question, but Alamat nodded anyway. Her father's expression shifted, anger giving way to something that resembled pride. Well, he said, stroking his chin, perhaps it was not such a foolish decision after all. Look at you, a beauty worthy of a chief's son now. Adebola, her mother hissed. How can you say such things? She has tampered with what the gods gave her. But her father was already envisioning the bride price her new appearance might command. The gods help those who help themselves, he replied, dismissively. Word of Alamat's transformation spread through Olarin like wildfire. By midday, neighbors found excuses to pass by their compound, eyes widening at the sight of her. Young men who had once ignored her now lingered, offering to carry her water jug or asking if she needed assistance with the simplest tasks. Kolad, who had rejected her so cruelly just weeks before, appeared with a gift of kola nuts, stuttering, through a formal greeting as though they'd never spoken before. I wondered if you might walk with me to the market tomorrow, he said, his eyes never leaving her face. I remember when you said you couldn't see me in the dark, Alamat replied coolly, enjoying his discomfort. He flushed. A foolish joke. I was blind then, but now I see clearly. By week's end, 3 formal courting requests had been made to her father. Alamat reveled in her new power, the heady sensation of being desired, coveted, pursued. She deliberately walked through the village center each day, wearing her finest wrapper, her skin seeming to glow more brilliantly with each passing day. Yet something strange was happening. Her clothes felt tighter, especially around her hips and waist. At first, she attributed it to the rich foods her father now insisted she eat, the best portions of meat, extra helpings of pounded yam. A chief's son would want a well-fed bride, he reasoned, but by the 10th day, even her loosest garments strained against her expanding flesh. Her once slender arms had grown thick, her graceful neck disappeared into rounded shoulders. When she walked now, her thighs rubbed painfully against each other. You're becoming large, her mother observed worriedly one evening as Alamat struggled to fasten her wrapper. It's nothing, Alamat insisted, though panic fluttered in her chest. Perhaps I need more exercise, but no amount of work or walking stemmed the bizarre growth. By the full moon, Alamat could barely fit through the doorway of their hut. Her beauty remained, her face untouched by the swelling that claimed the rest of her body. But now it seemed a cruel joke. Suitors still came, But their eyes held confusion, their compliments tinged with hesitation. That night she dreamt of the witch, her pointed teeth gleaming as she laughed. "The first payment comes due," the crone cackled in the dream. "Did you think beauty came without cost?" Alamat woke gasping, her nightclothes soaked with sweat, her body so heavy she could barely rise from her sleeping mat. She knew then what she must do. Before the village stirred, she slipped away once more toward the forbidden forest, her new body moving awkwardly through the underbrush, branches catching on her expanded flesh like hands trying to hold her back. The witch was waiting, seated on a stool outside her hut, grinding leaves in a mortar. "The first payment," she said without looking up. "Right on time." "Fix this," Alamat demanded, her voice breaking as she gestured at her grotesquely swollen body. "This wasn't part of our agreement." The witch continued grinding herbs, the rhythmic sound of pestle against mortar punctuating the forest's silence. "Our agreement," she finally said, looking up with milky eyes that somehow saw everything, "was that you would pay anything. I named no price. You asked no questions." Alamat's legs trembled beneath the weight of her transformed body. She sank to the ground, the earth cool against her skin. "Please," she whispered. "The men who once sought me now look away. Children point and laugh. Even my father's pride has turned to shame." "Beauty is power," the witch replied, setting aside her mortar. "Did you truly believe such power would come cheaply?" With effort, she rose from her stool and disappeared into her hut, emerging moments later with a curved knife, its blade gleaming despite the forest shadows. "Blood," she said simply. "Your payment is blood." Fear coiled in Alamat's stomach. "You want to kill me?" The witch's laugh rattled like dried seeds. "If I wanted you dead, girl, we wouldn't be having this conversation. No, I require blood freely, given, from the one who wishes to be beautiful." She extended the knife, handle first. 7 cuts, 7 drops from 7 places, enough to feed the spirits that granted your wish. Alamat hesitated, then took the knife. Under the witch's direction, she made small incisions. Her palm, wrist, inner elbow, shoulder, behind her ear, her ankle, and finally, over her heart. Each drop of blood fell into a small calabash the witch held beneath. "Drink," the witch instructed. When the ritual was complete, Alamat recoiled. "Drink my own blood? I can't then remain as you are." The witch shrugged, already turning away. Closing her eyes, Alamat brought the calabash to her lips and swallowed the coppery liquid. Almost immediately, heat radiated through her body, a burning sensation that made her cry out. She doubled over, clutching her stomach as the fire spread to her limbs. "What's happening to me?" she gasped. "The second transformation," the witch replied calmly. "The price is being collected." For hours, Alamat writhed on the ground, her body seeming to consume itself from within. The witch watched impassively, occasionally murmuring words in a language Alamat didn't recognize. When the sun began to set, the pain finally subsided. Alamat rose shakily to her feet, marveling at how light she felt. Her body had returned to its original slender form, though her skin remained the coveted honey-brown shade. Relief washed over her. "Thank you," she breathed. The witch's expression remained inscrutable. "Do not thank me yet. This is merely a reprieve, not a release." "What do you mean?" "The spirits that granted your wish feed on sacrifice. They have tasted your blood now and found it sweet. Before the next new moon, they will hunger again." Cold dread settled in Alamat's chest. "And if they aren't fed?" "Your beauty will warp once more, each time worse than before." Alamat stumbled backward. "You tricked me. I granted exactly what you asked for. The consequences are yours to bear." Desperate, Alamat fell to her knees. "There must be another way. I can't keep cutting myself, living in fear of turning monstrous again." The witch was silent for so long that Alamat thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she sighed, a sound ancient as the forest itself. "There is Another option. Hope flickered in Alimat's heart. Anything. I'll do anything. A slow, terrible smile spread across the witch's face. My son requires a wife. Your son? As if summoned by her words, a figure emerged from the hut. Alimat stifled a scream. The man, if he could be called that, stood bent and twisted, his skin mottled with lesions, his eyes yellowed and rheumy. Though his face suggested youth, his body appeared ancient, withered like a drought-stricken sapling. One night with him, the witch said, her voice eerily gentle, and your beauty will remain without the need for blood sacrifice. Revulsion rose in Alimat's throat. I can't, she whispered. Then return to the village, the witch replied indifferently. Prepare for the next transformation, and the next, until the day comes when no amount of blood will reverse what you've become. Alimat looked from the witch to her son, who stared at her with naked hunger. She thought of the village, of the suitors who now pursued her, of the chief's son who had sent a formal proposal just yesterday, of the life she had dreamed of, respected, admired, envied. One night, she said finally, her voice hollow. And then I'm free? The witch nodded. One night freely given, then you may return to your village and live the life you've chosen. As darkness fell over the forest, Alimat followed the witch's son into the hut, leaving behind, with each step, another piece of her soul. Alimat returned to Olarin as the first light of dawn broke the horizon, her body sore but her beauty intact. She bathed in the stream, scrubbing her skin until it was raw, trying to wash away the memory of the night with the witch's son. No amount of water could cleanse the sense of violation that clung to her, but at least, she thought, the ordeal was over. Within a month, she was married to Taiwo, the second son of the village chief. The wedding celebration lasted 7 days, with dancers from neighboring villages, drummers whose rhythms seemed to speak directly to the ancestors, and enough palm wine to make the elders forget their grievances. Alimat wore the traditional white chalk markings over her honey-brown skin, her eyes downcast in the performance of modesty, while inside she exulted in her triumph. You are the most beautiful bride Olarin has ever seen, Taiwo whispered as he led her to their new compound. His touch was gentle, his eyes full of adoration. For a moment, Alimat allowed herself to believe that perhaps, despite the cost, she had won happiness after all. The first 2 months of marriage were everything she had dreamed of. Taiwo cherished her, presenting her with gifts, brass bangles, imported cloth, even a pair of leather sandals from the northern traders. As the chief's daughter-in-law, she was treated with deference throughout the village. Women who had once mocked her now sought her friendship. Men who had rejected her couldn't meet her gaze. When she discovered she was pregnant, Taiwo's joy knew no bounds. He insisted she rest more, hired a young girl to help with household chores, and consulted the village's most respected herbalist to ensure a healthy pregnancy. Our child will be as beautiful as you, he promised, his hand resting proudly on her growing belly. Alimat smiled, but unease had begun to gnaw at her. Each night she dreamed of the witch's hut, of sickly yellow eyes watching her from shadows. Sometimes she woke convinced she could smell the witch's herbs, bitter, acrid, on her skin. And occasionally, just occasionally, she would catch a glimpse of her reflection and see for a heartbeat her original ebony skin looking back at her. As her pregnancy progressed, strange things began to happen. The calabash she was drinking from suddenly cracked without reason, spilling water across her lap. A line of ants formed a perfect circle around her as she sat in the shade of the compound's baobab tree. Most disturbing of all, the village dogs would howl whenever she passed, their cries so mournful it raised goosebumps on her arms. Bad omens, her mother-in-law muttered, eyeing her with growing suspicion. By the 7th month, even Taiwo's devotion showed signs of strain. He began spending more evenings with the village elders, returning late to their sleeping mat. When he did touch her, his caresses seemed perfunctory, his eyes often closed as though he couldn't bear to look at her. Is something wrong? Alimat finally asked one night, her voice small in the darkness. Taiwo was silent for so long she thought he might be asleep. You've changed, he finally said. There's something, I don't know, something not right. What do you mean? Her heart hammered. Against her ribs, he turned away. Sometimes when I look at you suddenly, you seem different, as if someone else is looking back through your eyes. Before Alimat could respond, a sharp pain knifed through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching her belly. The baby, she whispered. It's too early. The birth was agonizing and prolonged. For 2 days, Alimat labored, attended by the village midwives who exchanged increasingly worried glances as her screams echoed through the compound. When the child finally emerged, one of the women fainted. Another dropped the water basin she was carrying, backing away with her hand over her mouth. What is it? Alimat demanded, exhausted beyond measure. What's wrong with my baby? No one would answer. Even her mother-in-law, who had been directing the birth, stood frozen, her face ashen. Let me see my child, Alimat insisted. Reluctantly, the chief midwife approached, arms cradling a small bundle wrapped in cloth. As she placed the infant in Alimat's arms, she whispered, May the ancestors have mercy. One look, and Alimat understood their horror. The baby boy's features were grotesquely misplaced. One eye centered on his forehead, the other near his temple. His nose lay flat against his cheek, while his mouth stretched across his chin at an impossible angle. Worst of all, his skin changed, before her eyes, shifting from the deep black of her original complexion to the honey brown of her transformation, then back again, as if the child couldn't decide which form to take. A curse, someone whispered. The mother is cursed. Taiwo, when summoned, couldn't even look at his son. He stumbled from the birthing hut, retching in the dirt outside. That night, with the village finally quiet and the midwives gone, Taiwo entered their hut with a determined expression. We cannot keep it, he said, his voice flat. The elders say it must be returned to the earth. Alimat clutched the infant to her chest. Despite its deformities, it was still her child. No, she pleaded. He's innocent. Whatever sin you think I've committed. This is not about sin, Taiwo interrupted. This is about survival. If we keep this thing, our family will be ostracized. No one will marry our future children. We will be cast out. He reached for the baby. It must be done tonight under darkness. And though Alimat wept, she knew deep in her heart that this was her punishment, not from the gods, but from the witch whose bargain she had made. In the end, she surrendered the child to his father. They buried the infant beneath a twisted acacia. At the edge of the village, Taiwo digging the shallow grave while Alimat watched, numb with grief and guilt. No prayers were spoken. No rituals performed. When it was done, they returned to their compound in silence, the space between them vast as the night sky. But as they approached their hut, Alimat felt a familiar tingling beneath her skin, the beginning of another transformation. And this time she knew with terrible certainty that there would be no reprieve. The transformation was swift and merciless. Within days of burying her child, Alimat's body began to betray her once more, but differently than before. Instead of swelling, her flesh seemed to fold in on itself, creating ridges and valleys across her once smooth skin. Her fingers elongated unnaturally, joints swelling until her hands resembled gnarled roots. Her spine curved, forcing her to walk with a stoop reminiscent of the witch herself. Most horrifying of all was her face. Her features maintained their arrangement, but each began to stretch and distort, her lips thinning and spreading, her nose flattening until it barely protruded from her face, her eyes receding into deepening sockets. And her skin, her precious honey-brown skin began to mottle, patches of her original ebony breaking through like islands in a pale sea. An odor emanated from her, sweet and putrid simultaneously, like overripe fruit left too long in the sun. No amount of bathing could remove it. The scent clung to everything she touched, permeating their home until Taiwo began sleeping outside, claiming the night air was better for his chest. The village's reaction was swift and predictable. Women gathered their children when she approached the stream. Men looked away, making signs against evil. Even her mother-in-law, who had initially defended her, eventually suggested she remain within the compound until this affliction passes. But Alimat knew it would not pass. This was her final punishment, the true price of the beauty she had so desperately coveted. When Taiwo finally came to her, his face was set in lines of grim resolution. "You must leave," he said without preamble. "The elders have spoken. Your presence brings misfortune to Olarin." Though she had expected it, the words still cut deeply. "Where shall I go?" she asked, her voice as distorted as her body. "There is an abandoned hut beyond the eastern fields," he replied, unable to meet her eyes. "Food will be left for you, but you must not enter the village again." That night, as Alimat gathered her few belongings, she heard the village drummers begin a cleansing ritual, the rhythm designed to drive away evil spirits. The message was clear. She was no longer human to them, but a manifestation of malevolent forces. The abandoned hut was little more than a shell, its walls crumbling, its roof partly collapsed. Alimat made what repairs she could with her twisted hands, gathering grasses for thatch, packing mud into the larger holes. She created a small hearth, collected firewood, established a routine of fetching water from a nearby stream at dawn, before others would come. Days stretched into weeks. The promised food appeared sporadically, sometimes a basket of yams or millet, occasionally dried fish. More often there was nothing. Alimat learned to forage, gathering wild fruits and roots, setting simple snares for rodents. Her body continued its grotesque evolution, but her mind remained sharp, focused on survival. One evening, as the rains began, great sheets of water that turned the earth to mud and sent small creatures scurrying for shelter, Alimat heard voices approaching her. Hut. Fearful of villagers come to drive her even further away, she hid in the shadows, watching through a crack in the wall. 3 figures emerged from the downpour, 2 men and a woman, clothed in simple garments stained with travel. They carried bundles on their heads and wooden crosses in their hands. "Travelers seeking shelter from the storm," the woman called out in Yoruba. "Is anyone within?" Something in her voice, a kindness, an absence of fear, made Alimat step forward. "There is only me," she replied, remaining in shadow. "And I am not as others." The woman stepped closer, unafraid. "We are servants of a living God who sees beyond appearances. May we share your fire tonight?" Too tired to refuse, Alimat allowed them entry. They introduced themselves as pastors from a distant mission, traveling between villages to spread their message. If they were shocked by her appearance, they showed no sign of it. They shared their food with her, speaking of love and forgiveness with such conviction that, despite her skepticism, Alimat found herself listening. As the night deepened, the female pastor, a boaster, noticed Alimat's discomfort as she shifted her twisted limbs. "You are in pain," she observed. "May I pray for you?" Before Alimat could refuse, the woman's cool hands were on her forehead. The touch, the first gentle human contact she had experienced in months, broke something inside her. Tears streamed down her distorted face as Abosed began to pray in a language Alimat didn't recognize. The other pastors joined, their voices rising above the storm. Alimat felt a warmth spread through her body, different from the burning of the witch's transformations. This was gentle, cleansing, like sun-heated water. "The curse," Abosed said suddenly, her eyes flying open. "It is not of God. Something dark has claimed you, sister." Through broken sobs, Alimat confessed everything, her desperate bargain with the witch, the terrible price she had paid, the child she had allowed to be buried without ceremony. The pastors listened without judgment. When she finished, Abosed embraced her, seemingly unmoved by her stench or her grotesque form. "This power that holds you is strong," she said, "but our God is stronger. Will you let us help you break this curse?" For 3 days and nights the pastors remained with Alimat. They prayed over her, anointed her with oil, spoke words of power and deliverance. They led her to the unmarked grave of her infant son and performed proper burial rites, praying for his soul's peaceful journey. On the dawn of the fourth day, as the first light broke through the trees, Alimat felt a final transformation begin. But unlike the previous changes, this one brought no pain. Instead, a sense of lightness spread through her, as if layers of weight were being lifted away. She watched in wonder as her twisted fingers straightened, her hunched back uncurled. The mottled patches on her skin merged and settled, not into the honey brown she had coveted, but into her original deep ebony. When it was complete, Alimat stood before the pastors in her true form, black as midnight, tall and slender, her features arranged as nature had intended. Beautiful, in a way, she had never been able to see before. "This is who you were always meant to be," Aboused said gently. "Perfect in your creation. But my skin," Alimat whispered, examining her ebony hands. "It's still dark." "And gloriously so," Aboused replied. "Your darkness is not a curse but a blessing, rich with history, heritage, strength. The true curse was believing it needed to be changed." In the weeks that followed, Alimat traveled with the pastors, learning their ways, finding strength in their teachings. They spoke of a God who created all people in divine image, who saw beauty in every shade and form. Gradually, the shame she had carried for so long began to dissolve. A year later, Alimat returned to Olarin, not in secrecy or shame, but walking proudly in the midday sun, her black skin gleaming like polished stone. She came not seeking acceptance or forgiveness, but to offer it, to show those who had rejected her that true beauty emanates from within, from self-acceptance, from pride in one's identity, from the courage to be exactly who you were created to be. Some villagers didn't recognize her at first. Others remembered and kept their distance. But a few, including her parents and eventually some former friends, approached cautiously, drawn by the peace and confidence she now radiated. Taiwo, upon seeing her, fell to his knees, begging forgiveness for his weakness. Alimat raised him up, neither accepting nor rejecting his plea. "I forgave you long ago," she said simply. "Now I must continue my journey." She did not stay in Olarun. Instead, she established a small mission at the edge of the forbidden forest, a place where those who felt rejected or unwanted could find refuge. There she shared her story as both warning and promise, a testament to the dangers of denying one's true self, and the freedom found in embracing it. And those suitors eventually came again, drawn now, not by supernatural beauty, but by the strength and wisdom she embodied. Alimat chose to remain unmarried, dedicating herself instead to helping others recognize the beauty they already possessed. Years later, travelers would speak of the woman with skin black as midnight who lived at the forest's edge, how her touch could heal those afflicted by self-hatred, how her words could mend spirits broken by rejection. Some said she had been blessed by the gods. Others claimed she had defeated a powerful witch. Alimat smiled at these stories but never corrected them. She knew the truth was both simpler and more profound. She had finally learned to see herself through unclouded eyes. And in doing so, had discovered that the most powerful magic of all was self-acceptance, a beauty no witch could grant and no curse could ever take away.